In this episode of the Road to Connection, I have Hsieh. Johnson retired at the age of 27, has been traveling the world for the last 4+ years, working on his connection to himself, his connection to others, and his connection to self-love and love with others. He's worked through deep traumas with his family and has moved through some of the deepest blockages we can face as individuals within himself. So I'm excited to have him on for the second time in today's episode, where we discuss: is American work culture something that causes self-betrayal? We discuss the arc of long-term friendships and how to navigate those things when individuals have different personal growth curves and when we have different desires for speed in vulnerability. And we talk about life in a couple of different communities, one in San Francisco and one in a forest in Portugal, and how those communities allow for different ways of showing up and connecting and supporting others in their own growth. So please enjoy today's episode, which was shot a few months ago while I was in Portugal, on episode 10, I believe, or 9, of the Road to Connection podcast. I'm Simmo Simpson. Thank you for being here. Check it out. Haven't seen you for a while, man, in live time.
It's been a minute, yeah.
Yeah.
Lots has been up for me. I've been processing this romance sort of thing from last week from summer camp, like a lot of juice there. And then I think I'm going to offer a forgiveness ritual to my mom today, so I'm feeling like some anxiety about that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Does your mum know what a forgiveness ritual is? We talked about that before.
I described it. I mean, so I'm offering it to her with me as me. So it's actually not that complicated. I'm going to ask her, have I hurt you? I'm going to invite her to express however she wants, and then I'm going to ask for her forgiveness in a slightly ritualistic container.
Do you have an expectation about how
it's
it
not
goes?
right. Anywhere between like really beautiful and connecting and like really, really painful. And I don't know how much pain I'm signing myself up for. But that's the things we do for love, you know.
Yeah, man, we're so brave. Does it feel brave?
Thank you. It does feel brave. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, I think most people don't have the courage for that. And I know. I think with my mother, things feel easier to go deeper, and I could see myself moving to openness and depth. But I'm not there yet. But that's a big move.
This will be the first time in my life I have invited my mom to, among other things, scream at me.
You can overtly ask for it.
Well, part of the forgiveness ritual's instructions is like, yeah, like express whatever is there, like, and you're encouraged to go as deep in, like, as fully into the feeling as you feel comfortable. So, yeah.
Good luck, man.
It's not like he's screaming, but like it's like that's kind of what this is for.
Yeah. Why are you doing this today?
It's as good a day as any. And I'd like.
Why not last week? Like, why is this timing good, and why are you ready for it now?
I got back like 2 or 3 days ago.
Okay.
It was like getting settled a little bit. Yeah, and like I like I'm like a little tired today. Like there's still like kind of, it feels like I'm coming off the backside of this like processing the romance stuff, but it's still like a little bit alive. So it's like not like I could wait a day or two. Maybe that would be good. But actually, like I think I would rather do it sooner than later. Like I think the marginal like capacity boost is less valuable than like the marginal like more time on the back end to like repair, process, like whatever. If that's, you know.
I was expecting you to speak to like the sort of anticipation, the anxiety of anticipation, but that's not a major factor.
Sorry?
I was expecting you to name like just reducing the time of like and having to have some anxiety of anticipation.
Yeah, that's
That's,
there.
mm,
That's there some. It's not super alive. More is like like I got a whole plan. Like I want to start with I want to offer the forgiveness ritual with me, and then I want to offer it with my dad, like
mm.
for her to my dad, and then I want to try and get her see if she has any openness afterwards to doing one for her father. So there's like
Oh,
a almost like project management-y kind of kind of
her
like
father's alive and in Seattle.
her her father's passed away last year.
Mm. Right. Have you done that before? A forgiveness ritual with someone who's no longer here?
Yes. Yeah.
Mm. Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure what. Just suddenly to segue. I'm not quite sure what the topic of the call is or could be or might be. I think initially it was like, oh, I want to be interviewed by you. There was also talk of like you wanting to talk about the topic, which you said we were lining this up like a few months. So I can't actually remember what the topic was anymore.
I can't
Um,
remember. Yeah.
you can't remember either.
No.
Oh damn! I thought you were like, oh, we don't want to talk about this thing, but it's like a long time ago.
Oh yeah, I want to talk about community stuff, like in the course of being having Bitboy like at the Commons. But I think I got
Mm.
to write a bunch of essays, have conversations about it, and get like this, like do some of the sense stuff. I'm happy, like I would love to talk about that stuff more, and yeah, like that feels reasonably settled.
Mm. What's like the crux of that stuff?
Sorry, um, the crux of that. There were like a few cruxes. It was like how I personally relate to the Commons, and like how much is it a place that I want to invest my time. There was like the learning opportunity of like, oh, like how do I introduce crewing to an existing organization more effectively?
Mm.
There was stuff around like what is crewing, like what is the heart of it. There's stuff around like what to do in groups for what purposes. Like the slowing down trust thing, like what are people's goals, where are people at, and their like connection, like are they
Mm.
strangers, do they already have some rapport, like what is appropriate for what kind of like people slash relationships for like X purpose, like for fun versus deeper connection versus whatever it is. So there's a bunch of stuff, yeah, a bunch of that kind of stuff.
So I just read your Medium post that was around that stuff. Actually, is that just coincidence that what I was going through
Substack.
yesterday kind of paralleled some of that?
That one that I shared was I was writing it, I think, during the period where I was like, I want to talk about this stuff. Basically, there was like
Oh,
a
cool.
5 day
Well,
period.
that's very like me right now.
Cool. Yeah,
Some
I'd
of
love to
it.
chat about it. Yeah.
Mm.
That was like a 5 day period where it was
Because
basically,
this
I was
course.
like bursting to talk about this stuff. And like, I couldn't find anyone to talk about it with. So I was like, I guess I'll write about it. So I like pumped out 3 essays in 5 days. Like boom, boom, boom. It was actually
Nice.
pretty awesome. But yeah.
Yeah, I've been enjoying reading your essays. I think I've read two now.
Hmm.
I like them. I like when I read them. It's apparent that they're like just blasted out, but they feel like I don't know. I can feel the like multiple years of experience that goes into you talking through what you're going through, and I find it really insightful. And that one I read today really actually it helped me understand my own situation a bit more clearly and like see some other potential causes of how I showed up yesterday. That was, which was a challenging. Yesterday was challenging. Yeah. Ooh, it was the most. I still feel it in my body now, almost 24 hours later. I've never had that in cycling before, where something stayed with me so much. Yeah, so that's
Yeah. Do you want to
this
talk
question
about
of.
that stuff first slash before the recording, or as maybe as part of it?
I'm just assuming we're already rolling, and like this previous 10 minutes is just going to be in the video because I like what you shared about your mum and stuff. So, um, yeah, is that okay
Yeah,
with
sorry,
you?
I interrupted you. Yes, of course.
Mm. Um, Yeah, I think maybe we could start with the question of like slowing down, like accelerating into vulnerability versus slowing down into vulnerability, and then maybe segue into that, how that relates to your connection to the commons and what the commons is and all that stuff.
Sure.
Cool. Yeah, I wouldn't mind.
Do you want this to be more of a? Do you want this to be more of like an interview style, or more of like a dialogue style, or?
I think dialogue, man. I want to try and create a podcast that feels like dialogue, and it's been a bit challenging so far. I feel like either I'm interviewing someone else, or if you're interviewing me, it's going to feel like you interviewing me. And I want a conversation, which for some reason is like much harder when a camera's rolling. I've done 7 now, and I think they've all felt to some degree more like an interview than I wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the one with you felt the least interviewing. The first episode 1, which was now like it was like 8 or 9 months ago.
Yeah, I want to start with what's alive in you right now, like especially with this situation from yesterday and how it's living.
Yeah, I feel this burning ember. So often there's just like this, when I'm describing a feeling which is a bit uncomfortable, it's just like a heat in here. And I feel like every time there's a nuanced difference, and I'm just always describing the same feeling, but it's actually like really hard to put words to what's subtly different about it each time. But it does feel like there's some sort of like small hot thing burning in my heart from yesterday. So we had a circling, which is this community I'm living at right now with about 30 or so people, and my friend Sam, who I lived with in Oxford, like almost 2 years ago, he rocked up at the garden a few weeks ago randomly. Didn't know he was going to be here. It's like, whoa, we're living together again, and that's been its own journey, which has been cool. But he facilitated the circling yesterday, and I think he did a great job. But some intense stuff came up. There was perhaps like I allowed myself to lean into this. I think circling's challenging for me. I still very much feel like I'm at the beginning of learning it, and it's a real struggle. And yesterday I got this excitement that, whoa, I'm allowing myself to feel this thing, whatever's going on me, which was kind of a bit of judgment and a bit of like desire and for someone to be different, and a bit of like, and I let myself lean into it in a really enthusiastic way. And as it was happening, it felt really good. And I felt like it was good for the connection. And then a reflection was given that a couple of people found it really aggressive and bad. And there was all these like quite strong, like I guess as I experienced some negative judgments of like how I had behaved in those moments where I was feeling that like excited energy. Oh, and I just like and then I felt myself falling back into some old patterns in that moment of like a bit of collapse, a bit of like slight bit of dissociation, and a bit of self-judgment and like fear of really pushing back against what had been like given to me. And and then it was really emotional, and then there was like, this person doesn't want to talk about it anymore. And so I was like, oh man, it's like connection comes from working through the difficult stuff, and this person's overtly saying they don't want to work through it with me at all. And so that felt, and that to me is just like not how a relationship is built. And so there's a lot of pain in that. And it was just the timing was right at the end of the circle, and we kind of closed there. And it's like, whoa, I just left the circle with all that in me. I managed to unpack it with a few people, but not the main person who I felt the judgment from. And so I just felt a bit delicate today, really. Then I read your post, and it gave me some clarity on like what was actually underlying my motivation for like leaning into that person and trying to get them to open up more than they could in that moment. Was there another way of going about that? Yeah. And I liked in your post how you talk about Well, I'm curious. Yeah, I'm curious if maybe to hear your. Been a few weeks since you wrote that post, but yeah, what comes to you now as you think about this question of like, how do we lean into wanting more openness and depth of vulnerability with people versus slowing down?
Yeah. I guess first I want to just name, like, I feel like really tender for like hearing you share about your experience. Like, I can definitely relate to that experience. But like somehow like wanting to lean into connection and then being blamed for it. Like some version of this has been one of the things that I've been most plagued and challenged by over the last few years. And came up in this like kind of romance thing that I was really alluding to previously. Yeah, so I just feel a lot of tenderness. Yeah, because that's some version of that has been alive for me also.
I'm curious what judgments people name of you when they see that in you.
Well, the tricky thing about this one is that I think usually it's not named. Like, because if someone could name, like, oh, this is going too fast, then they would just do so, and then we wouldn't go too fast. Like, this has shown up, I think I've alluded to this a lot of times, like, with a lot of my old friends, where, like, there's just, like, this distance, or, like, kind of leaning away, or disconnection, or ghosting, or whatever, like, avoidance, and like I've just been left for years with this like why like what is happening, why. Yeah, we're right, like to say like, oh, actually I don't like have enough trust in this connection to like share that, like that is in itself like a very potentially like vulnerable thing to say.
So there's this like catch-22 that like that you mentioned in the article, like if people were feeling comfortable enough to be vulnerable, they could say that they're uncomfortable being vulnerable, but that thing itself is too vulnerable to say.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's felt like I've been like hunting a shadow or something, like hunting like looking for and finally like I was able to put it together after, like recently, in a way that at least makes sense to me. But yeah.
And how is that? What is that sense?
What is the sense, like how is it to like put it together, or what is my sense of what's going on, or
yeah, what is the thing that makes sense now to you, at least to you?
Yeah, it seems simple and straightforward. It's like this trust thing. It's like there's some trust that is between like how much I trust me and how much you trust you and how much we trust each other. Like that kind of governs like how much feels appropriate for someone to share.
And so then there's this like gap often between like one person has more trust of these things that leads to like a more openness to vulnerability, and one person has like less trust in those things. And I think you pointed towards something that's like feels like a really good potential solution to that, which is like just drawing from kind of the practices that come from workshops in like the sex positive space and neo tantra and stuff, which is just like being very, very overt and frequent with checking in those moments of like uncertainty about what the vulnerability distance is. So I wonder if you could, what might be like a way of doing that, just to get clarity on how that might look. And is that something you've done since sort of identifying that as possible?
Yeah, I've been doing it quite a bit to like I think actually like quite positive effect, pretty universally.
Nice.
And when I don't do it, it's like when the same problems arise. I mean, essentially, like it looks like just like slowing the fuck down. And yeah, for example, like a lot of checking in. Is like, as you know, while having a conversation with someone, just to pause and be like, hey, like how is this for you? Like, do you have somewhere you need to be? Like, is this a little heavy? Like, you know, like that kind of thing. In practice, it looks a little bit like caretaking. But I feel like thankfully I'm enough on the other side of kind of caretaking tendencies to like have like a decent amount of internal clarity about like when I'm doing it from like kind of just a place of like love and responsibility. Yeah.
When it's like a dysfunctional caretaking, where's that coming from?
To me, it'd be something like, oh, like assuming that someone needs, needs care, or needs, assuming that someone needs to be reassured or coddled or something like that.
And does that look different from the outside? Is that like a slightly different way of that?
There's a slightly different vibe. Like taking care of someone always presents as for someone else. But like sometimes it has a subtle vibe of it's actually for me, the person doing the caretaking. And I feel like now when I do it, it's like I feel pretty clear that it's not for me. Like I would rather not, actually, but out of care for the other person, I'm doing it.
Interesting. So part of the dynamic yesterday was like, I felt like the person I was interacting with didn't need the checking in, and afterwards they actually came to me overtly and said like that whole thing was fine for me, but it was the observers that had this assumption about the interaction, and actually like they were like, whoa, if that had been me, that would not have been okay, and I wouldn't have interacted with those people in that way because of like my assumption about how that wouldn't have been okay for them. And so there's this thing of like, if I'd done the checking in with that person I was interacting with who didn't need it, the observers kind of needed it to understand the dynamic. And I wonder, like, what would have been the best to navigate that interaction, given that I was like feeling this sort of amping up of frustration, and I wanted to name it and I wanted to lean into it. And simultaneously, I want the observers to feel like I am somebody who is safe because I'm reading different dynamics and adapting as needed. It's like, how am I being perceived, and how do I navigate those things? I think is quite a complicated question. I wonder if that's something you thought about.
Yeah, the thing to do there, like, seems somewhat straightforward to me. How you would arrive at it, maybe much less straightforward. But I imagine the thing that would have made the most sense would just be to like pause in the interaction and ask kind of the circle, like, oh, like how is this for everyone? Like, does anyone like anything come up from anyone mind if we continue, like that kind of thing. Maybe that would give them a chance to share sooner. But like actually, like I feel like that's kind of the whole point of circling, is like people to have their own experiences, and like and it sounds like like something about that interaction was activating for them. It sounds like there wasn't the space to unpack that because the circle ended, but it's like, oh, like why was it activating for them?
Yeah,
like, and like obviously
I think the point was
supporting that, but
right. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's this challenge, which is like people who are new to circling. So I think the person who was most, at least vocalized their like difficulty with that the most, hadn't done circling much before, and almost nobody that had done circling at all, or maybe I'd done it once at most, apart from the facilitator. And so that's a challenging bit as well, because like, what is circling, and like how much does one set the scene of like this can get pretty heated, but it's like a contain. And so I facilitated a circle last week, and I spent 10 minutes like caveating before it began. Like this can get really heated. It can be really triggering. It can like activate traumas, and it's like, are you open to that level of like intensity potentially arising? And then we circled, and it didn't get so intense. And then I think people came back and like, oh, this time there was less caveats given, fewer caveats, and people were expecting something to chill, and then it just like got really intense for some people. How intense circling can be only comes from, and what circling is hard to explain without having done it a bunch. I think it took me tens of hours to really get what circling was. before I had some. Yeah. Sorry, you were saying.
Yeah. Like, my sense is that like the intensity of a circle is, to me, ideally like calibrated to the capacity of the people in the circle.
Yeah.
So like it's not overwhelming. Like no one is winning if it's over. Like I would rather have a circle that is less like classic, less canonical circling, but more connecting, and people like stay, are able to come out like feeling like at least meta supported, regulated, whatever. Right. Than like to do like the classic circling experience and a bunch of people like lose their shit,
I think that was a big lesson for me yesterday. Was like, I didn't calibrate properly. I assumed, because a couple of the new people were like quite naturally skilled at just like being with their experience and naming it. So I got into this state of like, oh, people know what we're doing here. I can like just let rip. And I was like, oh shit, no, that isn't what I could do in retrospect.
Yeah, it's hard to pay attention to all like kind of all the individuals in kind of the group. So.
And that's the beauty. You have to learn. It's like such an incredibly complex environment. It's like you're really playing chess, and like it's a lot of learning that never ends. For never-ending learning. But it's my main. I think why I'm so activated is like it feels like it's spilled over into like my life here outside of the circle, because people's expectation of what was happening didn't match what happened, and so it's like, oh, this person was doing something beyond what circling is, something like that.
Yeah. So this gets into like maybe the territory that I've been exploring lately, like including with this like romantic thing, is like, at what point am I overextending myself? Like, at what point am I not honoring myself by leading into connection and opening up in that way? Right? Like, there's a frame in which like you being so forthright in the circle about what was going on for you was like dangerous and like not safe, and like actually like hurt your connections, because there wasn't enough trust there.
Yeah.
And so like there's part of this like slowing down thing is also like, I think an important piece of it is starting to see like where do I over trust, and like how does it hurt me?
Where do I over trust, and how does it hurt me? Is there a, yeah, that resonates. I feel
where this feels like part of like a general blind spot of the kind of anxious like attachment, which I think we we both lean.
Yeah, that's been. So what's been happening? Is this a point to maybe segue slightly into this romance situation?
Sure. Let's see. What if anything do I want to say about it? That feels complicated. It feels like there's a lot more like that's like a part of like a lot of. I'm mostly like just kind of amazed at how complex and how much is like has come up in like just like 5 days of knowing each other or something, or of having met.
It's a new person.
Sort of. It's complicated. I'll tell you off the podcast.
Cool. Is there anyone I know?
You might, maybe. I don't think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I don't want to go too heavily into circling as like the core topic of the conversation. I guess that's where the desire for the segue came from, perhaps. Yeah. What's it like?
So maybe I'm like curious, like you kind of alluded to this in some messages, but like what has it been like making friends at the garden, and what, if anything, have you been learning about that?
So for the listeners, the garden is the community I'm living at right now in Portugal. 20 acres of land. Been here, I think, about 4 years. There were some core employed team members who spend many months a year here. A handful, maybe, I'm guessing there are like 6 or 7 of them. There are. Oh, I just want to change the angle of this camera. There are forests and flowers and boulders. Really feel like out in the middle of nowhere, where you can be completely in nature without being ever worrying anyone's going to cross your path, and so a lot of room for like wild adventure. And so just the moment I walked through the gate, I'd been in Bangkok for 2 months, this epically intense metropolis, and then I came pretty much directly here, and the nervous system just decompressed instantaneously. It was like, wow, it is so green and beautiful. And so that was the first impression, and that stayed with me. It's like a really easy place to get to the deep calm of nature, which is very potent. And then there's people here, and it's slightly chaotic, and it's slightly anarchist, I would say, almost. It's like not really a clear set of rules, and that's it's a benefit and a struggle, and I'm noticing both those things. Yeah, it relies on people's kindness and generosity of spirit, which I'd say everyone here has, and so it generally runs pretty smoothly. How's connection been? First 2 weeks I was sick, and so I entered this really introverted space, which I'm not used to. And when I came out of that, I found it a bit challenging to get back into connection with people. I'd kind of set this kind of way of being a little bit. But I found more and more freedom in like connection and fun and adventure. There's a lot of, it's a very tactile community. There's a lot of cuddling, and there's a lot of like intimacy. I wouldn't say there's like a huge amount of sexuality, but there's a lot of sensuality. And I think a number of different things have fed into that being challenging for me right now in a way. I've really changed my relationship to how I'm going about dating. Like really trying to avoid sexual connections almost. I think I've gone through it. I think so I'm noticing in a lot of my friends who are in their 20s and 30s, they're going through this phase of like really exploring sexual connection, and that's something I had many years of as well. And I think it's maybe a fundamentally important thing to go through. But I think I've gone through it, and it's not what I need now. It's not what I want now. And so finding myself in this different space where, I actually want to find a life partner and not be like overcomplicating anything beyond that by having connections with people who aren't viable life partners. And so that's left me feeling like a little bit of jealousy and longing, because I see all this like intimate connection, and it's like I don't want that, but part of me does want it. And so that's probably the biggest struggle here for me. It's like a little bit of jealousy and a little bit of loneliness is not quite the right word, but it's like so that's been a central sort of theme, going about like navigating extroversion, introversion, and navigating like sensuality, sexuality, friendship, nature. There's a lot of creativity here. There's a beautiful like music space with loads of musical instruments, and there's lots of really good musicians here. I've hosted 2 events here, and that's been great. I hosted an open mic night on Saturday, and I think that was maybe the most fun I've had in the entire time here, and a lot of people had a wonderful time. And a lot of people got a chance to really display their talent, and wow, there are some unbelievably talented people here. Yeah, dancing, music primarily, but like exceptional, like stuff I would pay $100 to go and see. And they just like rock up on an open mic. I didn't even know they could do that. Like, holy crap. So that was really wonderful. And then just having jams with people, and then just like the random chats. But I think because of the chaos and the size of the place, it's been a little bit challenging at times to find the depth of connection I had in smaller communities. I think also because I'm trying to get work done, there's like this pulling myself in 2 directions, wanting connection, but wanting to get work done. Yeah, I don't know if I'm quite answering the question. So like any curiosity that I'm not like pointing towards.
I appreciate the context, at least, that you're setting around it. I guess I'm wondering something like, and you've been kind of gesturing at maybe like, maybe more structured would be like, what's made making friends at the garden like a more easier than on average versus, and what things have made it harder than on average. And like maybe another question, like a related question would be like, what have you tried basically, and have you been experimenting at all with like how to relate to people there, and like what, if so, like what have you been learning in those?
Yeah, there are some things which really make making friends easier. I think the primary one is just amount of time together. Like, there's people here who have been here the whole time I've been here, but probably like, maybe there's like 15, 10 or 15 people who, probably like 20 or so people who've been here at least 80% of the time I've been here. And I see them every single day, and we interact every single day, and I can sit next to them at dinner. There's like, we have beautiful outdoors. Yeah, there's always this option to eat meals together with others, and that's a lot of time together. Then there's a hot tub which can fit 16 people in, and most days has had people in it. There's a lot of nakedness, which is kind of fun. It feels just like more. That changes something, I think, slightly. I'm not sure what it changes. It's like, feels like, yeah, it'd be useful to introspect on that more. I feel like it changes something subtly. I just struggle with that.
I imagine it like imbues like just a greater sense of like safety and trust. It's like, oh, like people trust themselves to be like naked, and so like there's like a greater collective trust that like, oh, like we can show up more fully, like in a literal sense.
Yeah, it feels freeing somehow. On the weekend, I was just walking around, and there were 5 people just like covered head to toe in mud. The lake's kind of being dried right now, and they were just naked, rolling in the mud, and they climbed up this massive kind of structure, and I just jumped in and joined them, and that was fun. And then someone came along and took photos, and like, we were all very comfortable with that, and they checked with us afterwards if we were happy with it. Yeah, so a lot of like spaces. I guess it's a place that's full of third spaces in a way. Fourth spaces, third spaces. I don't know. Third spaces. Yeah. Because it's just like people congregate. It's like we're in this neighborhood and we're the only ones here, though. They're like, oh, there's people in the hot tub. There's people up the hill in the nest. Like people playing guitar on the boulder. And there's people hanging out in the treehouse. And so that's opportunity for connection. I would say it's so big that people can go off in their own crews and you just like can't find them. And so people might want to do that. And so I think there's subgroups within the group of people who become very good friends and they spend a lot of time together. I wouldn't say it's cliquey. It doesn't feel cliquey. I think at the beginning, calibrating again to being in community and like finding the right level of energy to like be someone that is nourishing to be around. And for me, that's sometimes for some people's nervous systems. I can be high energy and high intensity, and some people are really delicate on the other end of a spectrum. And so calibrating, I think, took a little while. I feel much more calibrated now. I think there's like a calm that's come to me that's taken a couple of weeks too. And maybe that was like just an excitement of being around a bunch of new people. It took a couple of weeks to like settle down. There are events most evenings. A lot of dancing, workshops on. People are occasionally running workshops on connection type stuff. It's not really authentic relating circling. It doesn't have that sort of like mind. Some of it did. There was one from Ista that one person did one night, which was about owning sort of requests and rejections, and that was nice. That was really connective. Yeah. And the weekends are kind of more free. We go. There's a winery which is like a 2-minute walk from here. They sell bottles of wine for 1.5 euros. So sometimes people stroll down there and have a bottle or 3. But there's no drinking or smoking on premises or vaping. Then there's towns nearby. People went to a carnival. I think a carnival. It was more like a village fair. And I was one of the very few people who didn't go. I was like wrestling with like, I really want connection, but I really need some time to process. That was like after being here for 2 weeks. And so nearly everybody had left the premises. There were like 3 people here. And I had a really deep experience. I really went in. It was quite an intense emotional journey, and it was really important. And after that, I felt like I suddenly grounded into this place. But that was 2 weeks in. That felt like a really important turning point in my experience here. Did a lot of crying. Did a lot of just laying on the ground naked in the sun, thinking and processing Yeah, it was really just felt really like, oh, this is what it's like to be just like a mindful human being. I was like very distant from like modernity. Felt like it felt much more just like tribal man kind of vibe. Yeah. So a bit of a ramble. I'm not quite sure. Yeah, I know you have some interest in coming here, and curious like how this my sort of very skewed report of my experience here lands with you as in terms of how this place sounds.
Yeah. I was wondering, I noticed like a little hit of tiredness just now, like a little bit of like out of body for a moment. Yeah. Yeah, I think I was with a bit of disconnection, but I feel like I'm back now.
Yeah, I feel like I was rambling a little bit, and I also lost connection.
Well, that's good. What's that like to say? I feel like rambling carries a bit of like self-judgment in it.
Yeah, I'm like chastising myself for not being more mindful and not giving you enough space and not even noticing that I'm getting carried away and talking.
I also could have jumped in and said something earlier. So
I'm curious. That where does that state is that statement coming from? What's going on?
It's coming from like a desire to like be able to take more self-responsibility. And like maybe it's something like boundaries or speaking up and wanting to improve my like continue cultivating my capacity to do that.
What would you like to talk about?
What would I like to talk about? Well, I liked the question that you asked before, but I forgot it.
You've got it?
Yeah.
It was like it was about like your thoughts on like coming to garden kind of thing. I can't remember the exact phrasing.
Oh yeah. Yeah, my sense of it, like I feel like I have a reasonably clear sense of it. Like it feels like it's kind of like a almost like festival, summer campy adjacent-ish environment kind of constantly.
Somewhat. Yeah, I think right now, at times it feels more quiet than that. And because it's so dispersed, it's such a big area.
Yeah.
And it depends on time. Yeah, time of day. Like at times in the day, it feels quite quiet. And like, where is everybody? And then everyone's just like spread out. And there's like this kind of people, suddenly their quiet time syncs up. And then suddenly everyone needs to connect again. There's like these waves of excitement and calm.
Got it. Then yeah, maybe more similar to like a co-living kind of like thing. But these are all like very much in wheelhouses of things that I enjoy. So yeah, that'll to come.
Thanks for getting up. You got up early for the call.
A little bit. I also wasn't able to fall back asleep. I got up early and I couldn't fall back asleep. So it wasn't because of the call that I was awake earlier than I wanted to be.
What's the comment? Is that a reasonable jump of topic right now? I feel
yes. Actually, I want to ask another question. I want to ask like what's it been like working on RoadToConnection? Like, how do you feel about like the content that you've like shared, the conversations you've had that you put out?
I really like the conversations I've had. I think that's been the most enjoyable part, and they've all surprised me. I think this one is the one where I had the least idea what we're going to talk about, and I think maybe this will feel like an oddball in retrospect in comparison to the others. I think the others felt like they were all the other conversations kind of were focused on the heart of the other person's like life, and so this is a bit more like we know each other very well, and we're kind of talking about some specific topics. This feels different, but most of them have been like, whoa, feels really meaningful. The last conversation we touched on politics in a way I haven't touched on before, and that awakened something in me of like noticing a fear around politics and a desire to not get pulled into like the classic way that politics is discussed, which is very polarizing. I want to go meta on politics. I want us to be able to zoom out and look at the mechanisms around which we talk about politics. And so that was, I noticed that kind of in the moment, and after the fact, it's something I've thought about a fair bit. And so that's, I mean, that's kind of one of the core, it's been one of the core motivators for this whole kind of thing, but I haven't touched on it yet until the last conversation with Sharon, who's from Israel. He's very critical of Israel's behavior. Yeah, and it's a core issue of his life, really. And so it was a bit naive of me, I think, to expect that somehow we wouldn't talk about that. I expected we wouldn't, but I didn't think that it didn't really cross my mind that we'd talk much about it. Yeah, I think it was right. And so then when the topic came up, I noticed myself like not knowing how I wanted to engage in it, and so that's been very interesting. And I do want to engage in the topic of like politics and polarization, but I really want to be sure that I'm approaching that in a particular way. So that's been cool. This last couple of weeks, I've been working on a book that I've been talking about for a long time and finally started, which is a guidebook to get out of loneliness. And I've kind of mapped 10 steps from like completely involuntary isolated all the way to like living a life of the most nourishing, flourishing, connected community. And that's been really fun to start mapping and start writing. So that feels good. Feels like a good project. Although it feels like writing my dissertation or something, and that's not a mode I enjoy being. I don't be sat at my computer writing, but at the same time, it feels like an important crux of this project to have like an actionable plan that someone can pick up anytime and follow. And it's a big task as well. So I'm trying to keep it like refined, precise, but also like all encompassing in some way. And so that's a difficult thing to do. But that's been the heart of my work in the last couple of weeks. Making videos has been hard of the first year of this project. It's been about a year now, and not anywhere near as productive with making videos as I would like. But I published a video the other day, and I just finished editing a video like an hour ago, which feels like it will be the most vulnerable one so far to post. It's about my relationship to masturbation and sex and how that affects how I show up with friendship and relationships and stuff. So that might get posted today. So it's been a really interesting journey in like, what am I afraid of saying, and how can I act? What do I? Who do I want to? How can I show myself fully and not feel the fear of doing that? Because I want people to know who I am, and there are some things which are really scary to talk about.
Yeah, I noticed some stuff came up for me while you were speaking. There was some. Oh, I forget what the first point was. Around politics. Oh yeah, I was just feeling a lot of resonance with it. Like, oh, I have some fear of talking about that also, and my story is that a lot of people have fear around talking about it to the point of like trauma response sort of thing. And so there's and like so my impulse with politics is very much just like I want to engage with it, and I want to do it like very slowly so that we can like go meta and like de-armor and de-layer so that we can actually like connect through it. That's kind of like where I'm at with it right now. There's just like a lot of resonance with what you were sharing. And then there's something about like the book, which is awesome. That like I'm glad you're like doing that. Like this distillation of like, you know, like how, like what do I do? Like how does this work? And like I couldn't help but also have this moment of, because I've been doing, I think, a lot of like trying to see the other sidey sort of thing lately. But I'm like, there's a way in which like the book you're writing would be like my assumption or story is that like it's a book on like how to connect with people by someone who leans anxious for people who lean avoidant. Like I wonder what the analogous book would be that's like by someone who's avoidant on how to like protect yourself or something for people who are anxious. Like maybe I need that book.
So there's an assumption that I'm writing primarily for avoidant, people who might be lean avoidant.
There is, yeah. There's multiple assumptions based in there, like in there, yeah.
Cool. I think one uncertainty with the channel and with the book as well is like I'm not quite sure who I'm writing for, and so I guess it feels somewhat like I'm writing for myself. What I'm in the process of is thinking of every possible obstacle anyone might face on any step of the process. And so, like, what obstacle might someone face? So, and each of the 10 steps is broken down into many sub-steps. And so maybe one step is just like resolving conflict, and maybe that's even broken down into many steps. And then, like, what obstacles might someone face in resolving conflict? And I think there are some obstacles that people leaning avoidant might face more than those leaning anxious, and vice versa. And I want to map every to a degree. Maybe I end up with like 300 different obstacles, and I like try and give a few solutions and like ideas for each obstacle. And so maybe I'm trying to be like comprehensive, and it's kind of coming out of a place, of like looking at my own obstacles, looking at the obstacles of my friends, many of whom lean avoidant.
That makes sense.
So I lean introvert, whereas I lean anxious and extrovert. And so I do want to be, I don't know. I'm not sure. I really will be really excited to get feedback on it as it takes shape a bit more.
Yeah. As you speak, I realize like what I was reflecting on was less about the audience and more about like maybe in the context of the essay that I was writing that I shared about slowing down. It's like, here's like a definitive guide to how to connect faster, connect better. Like, where's the definitive guide on how to connect slower or something?
Oh, love it.
What are the boundaries? Like, what are the things to trust or not trust, and to be gauging, and to be like noticing, and to be like, what do those things mean, and like about like how I show up or don't.
Beautiful. Oh yeah, it makes me like keen to get your input more concretely. And like really put voice to these sort of dichotomies and all kinds of different questions that might come up in the process. And wondering if there might be some interesting collaborating on it.
Yeah, I guess there's an assumption that I'm not the best person to write that. Like I'm like someone who's been avoidant for the last 30. They'd be the one to write that. Like I'm new to this. I've been doing this for 3 months. Like paying attention to this thing for tons. Other people have been intuitively at least paying attention to it their whole life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's like, this is just another bullet in the arsenal of like, be more vulnerable, be more connected. And it's like, well, what about the slowing down part? The slowing down approach, which is like fundamentally important for many.
Yeah.
And being okay with that. So maybe ultimately I'm writing it for myself. And it's like, and one of the framings I have is like, part of the solutions are like external, like do this. Part of them are internal, and maybe one of the internal solutions is like really noticing people need to slow down. Maybe you even need to slow down. Yeah, great, appreciate that.
Or just like, what is the appropriate speed for between the two of us?
Yeah, attunement, calibration, cooperation. What do we want? What do we need? Yeah, I was talking about this a little bit with a friend earlier, and it's like, when someone else is explosively vulnerable like me, it's really fun. Maybe that's what draws us both to Ubud as a place. There's like a lot of people there who are like really leaning into that, and it's like, I just get to like ride that roller coaster all day.
Yeah.
But I also want to calibrate with those who don't want that. Like many of the most wonderful people in my life. Is that true? Yeah, probably. Yeah, many function differently. There was a different growth arc, connection.
Yeah.
Thanks for that question. It's also been a fun way to just have an excuse to connect with friends in a deep way, or get to know people better. The interview with Will was a really good opportunity to like get to know him better. And the one we did with Sharon, my housemate, it's like, I didn't know him that well at all, and suddenly we just had that really deep 90-minute conversation, and it definitely like enhanced our connection. And so it's a really fun tool to just like accelerate connection.
Yeah. Yay. It's funny that you like what you just alluded to, like a general phenomenon that I've been reflecting on like a lot, like just very recently, in like maybe a more like full ways. Like there's something to like meeting someone in different contexts, or like connecting in different contexts, where like it can be like really jarring. You know, like you're a coworker who you're really like buttoned up with, and then you meet them at a sex party, you know, like, oh fuck, like what, you know. But like there's lesser versions of this, right? Like, oh, like we connect deeply at circling, but we're strangers, and like now, like, do we want to get lunch? Like, like, what's your name? Or like at a temple night, at an infamy space, or like, you know, like, oh, we were friends in high school, like now you're with my college drinking buddies, right? There's all sorts of versions of this, like, you know, or like, hey, we're housemates, but now we're in this like podcast context. And there's like, and you know, this was showing up in this like kind of romance thing that I was alluding to. Is like, oh, like in the one-on-one context, but in the group context, like even that can be like quite different. And reflecting on how like that can be jarring, and if like that can be like integrated, like that's like this like really path to like much deeper connection.
Have you found that like, jarringness has ever been like detrimental to the connection?
Yeah, definitely. Like
my intuition is like,
if there's not opportunity for the reintegration to happen, if it's not possible for the reintegration to happen.
Yeah. What's been hardest? Does something stand out? Of that? I know you. Yeah. Well, I'm curious. Yeah.
Like when it has been hard.
Yeah. Which context shifts have been really?
One version of this is like my high school friend comes to hang out with my college drinking buddies and doesn't like them. Another version is like the connection is like new or tenuous enough that like, and maybe there's like some triggering that happened in one of the interactions or something, to the point where it's like, oh, like actually this is like, there's like more spaghetti here than like actually like one or both people like have the desire to like work through, and then like that connection dissolves.
Yeah, really, really. Yeah, really. That happens. Context shifts. Things coming in which are so destabilizing that the thing itself is not stable enough to hold.
Yeah. Like that feels like a dynamic that's true of this like romance thing that I'm alluding to. Is like, it's like I think it's very much riding the edge. It's like
bringing that romantic connection into connecting with other people, or just like the amount of challenge that. I mean, romance is interesting. I think I'm just like, it's a difficult one. Sometimes it just flows so easily. It's like, well, this is easy. Yeah. Sometimes it's just like there's a lot of challenge, and I guess, it's like, well, what point do we cut our losses, or what point do we lean into this? It's just like an amazing growth opportunity, and how calibrated the two people in their approach to that. And do you want to speak more specifically to your situation right now? Is that something you prefer not to talk about?
I think I'd rather not go into the specifics, but just like I think there were like multiple factors that made it extra challenging to navigate between two contexts. Between like just the group context versus the private context, versus the one-on-one context. But what I wanted to say about like the gold at the end of the rainbow is like, if it can be like bridged and like integrated, like how beautiful that is. Like I think I've always related to it as like there's a way in which it's like parts of me get to like meet each other like out in the real world in like this embodied way. Like there's this embodied
parts of me get to meet.
Well, actually, let me take a step back. That's what I said there was a different thing. there's like when we can connect in different contexts, there's this embodied sense of like almost like no bad parts. It's like I know that you accept this part of me because we lived it together. Like there's no theory that there's no trusting that you like accept this part of me. I just saw it. Like I know it. Yeah, and vice versa.
Really strengthening, and to work through them and to find full harmony and togetherness at the end of it, and trust on that, or on whatever the issue was. That's really fundamental. I don't know. Yeah, are there any? Do you have any long-term connections, or you haven't had to go through some form of that?
Long-term, no. I think this is
how important is it
like this,
for friendships to actually work? Like, is it can people have long-term friendships without that? Is it possible, or is it just like those things are always going to come up and working through them is fundamental?
I think like yes and no. It's like there are people who are coworkers for like 10 plus years, but there's a reason they stay coworkers and don't become friends.
Right.
Like you can have a relationship that stays in a single context long term, like sure, like that's great and fine and not a problem. Yeah, like my sense is that the relationships that do deepen, like this is a dimension that they deepen into, is like seeing more of each other. Like like as a family person, like while you're like with your college friends, like while you're wasted, while you're like tired, while you're sick, while you're going through a bad breakup, like while you're like riding a high at work, while you're like excited about your upcoming trip, while you're whatever it is. Yeah, and there's something in here around like length of relationship that I think actually is like the time is not the like causal factor, but it correlates with so many causal factors or something that's what that it is useful.
I think there is something in time that is beyond like correlating with multitudinous causal factors. But I don't think it's like fundamental. So I think some people are just like, you have to be, the more time you spend with someone, the greater your friendship will be. And if you've only been friends with someone for a year, you can't be as good a friends with someone if you've been friends with them for 10 years. I think that's not true at all from my experience. I think I can, but maybe there's something to do with like the resilience of a friendship, the potential for it to withstand turbulence and obstacles that is increased with time. I think I've formed what I felt like really strong friendships, especially when traveling or going somewhere new where other people are arriving new, whether it's a new job, a new location, moving to a new country. But this, and they felt somewhat secure. I think there is some level of like resilience that comes just from like intensity of connection. But yeah, I do think that's increased by time.
I think the strongest version of this argument that I would back is something like, right, there's some of the, or something around like bridging life changes, going from single to in a relationship or vice versa, for example, or like some like relationship to myself. There's a way in which like change like emerges over time. Right? Like I don't decide like I'm going to change today. Like things happen and of course some people's lives are set up such that change is happening more frequently versus less frequently. But like there's some amount to some degree, like the whole point is that my relationship to it is that like change is emergent and like that requires time.
For changing within yourself.
Yeah, like it would take time for me to change, which means that for for our relationship to bridge multiple evolutions of me, it will the more time we have together, the more evolutions of me we will have the opportunity to bridge.
Nice.
And now there might be more changes that happen with say me, who is someone who's like in my perception like changing a lot over time, versus someone who's like pretty like stable and like coasting in a way that they're like happy with.
Yeah,
still time that like that's the strongest argument that can make, I think, for like time as a causal factor.
It makes me think of this question of like, we change, we become this, we were person A and now we're person B and now we're person C. And as person C, we meet some other people who are like person C, who we are now. And you and I met like 2 or 3 years, just over 2 years ago. And we were maybe like in a similar way in certain ways. And so we connected and then we make a friendship. And it's like, oh, you've got all these, they've had very different life paths. They've in some ways become different people than you are on some trajectories. And it's like, oh, well, what about a connection with them? How to retain connection with people you met as this future self, how to retain connection with these people who you may connect with as a past self, and you've diverged increasingly away from both who you used to be and who they have become. And like, the way to retain those friendships whilst making new friendships, and the value of that, and how to balance all those things. And I know that's something you have been wrestling with in the last, yes.
Yeah, it's something I feel really strongly about, actually. Like, it feels like a huge blind spot. And like, of course, like I'm like sympathetic to like the reasons behind it. Like, but of like a lot of the kind of like traveling, more like alternative hippie spiritually communities, where my perception is that like the old friendships are like thrown away. They're like, the bridges are burned, they're disconnected, like whatever. In a way that like, I feel like is like really unwise and like sacrilegious, like dishonoring both themselves and the other person and like love. Yeah, that's a strong version of it.
Yeah. And so it's like you throw away old friendships.
Yeah,
you're doing something wrong. What does it mean to throw? I'm not sure if you said throw away old friendships.
It definitely does come out as wrong, and there's definitely some emotional charge there. But maybe I wouldn't say wrong so much as like maybe like the more like concrete, like simpler, relatable intuition would be something like you can't buy old friends. Like there are people like this, the navigating change stuff, right? Like there's like people who have seen you through life stages in the past that like no one else can see because they already happened. Like the people who saw them are the people that saw them. That's kind of maybe like the more like functional, practical version of it.
I think there's something deeper, even deeper than that. I love this phrase, like you can't buy old friends. I think it is. There is something like metaphysical. There's just like there's some potency to like these people who. Many of my closest friends from like 14, 15, 16, 17 years old, I haven't seen in years. But I don't feel like they're not my friends anymore. I feel like we will reconnect at some point, and some of them it's been more than a decade. I mean, I think I've consciously made this choice not to end my old friendships, but to very heavily focus on new connections. And a lot of that's been the sense that there's a version of me that I'm trying to become, and that we are the product of the people we spend the most time with. And I can't keep adding new valuable people into my life and hold on to all the others. I meet hundreds of people every year, and there's a handful who I really want to like. Wow, these people are exactly what I need and want in my life right now. There's just not space to hold all of my best friends from every phase of my life in that way. And it's not that I want to throw them away or let go of them. It's not that I don't want to have connection with them again. But there is a pro. But it's not that I don't have plans to reach out to some of my old friends right now. I think it will be fine. And there's been a couple of instances of that over the last decade where I've seen old friends again. It's been wonderful, and I want that again. But I don't see a world where I build a future with my old friends. That can't map onto reality for me.
Yeah. I think I'm like maybe I'm reacting less, like maybe my sharing is less about like what is actually concretely done and where like you actually invest your time and energy, or like not you, but like people, or like like I think like the nuances of like actual day-to-day like decision making and what makes sense in the context of life, like totally fair. And I think like I often perceive like almost like a glorification or something of like you just got to set your boundaries, you just got to go no contact, like there's like a as though like that is good or something. And I think
I see that as well. Yeah. I think there's something that's not honoring.
Like, speak up for the other side of it. Like, I don't know if that's good, man.
Is that something you've experienced?
Kinda, yeah. I mean, like I'd say like it almost to me like my perception is actually largely comes from like conflict avoidant places. It's like, oh, there's conflict, I'll like just cut it off, or like, oh, you're not getting along, just cut it off, like, oh, like you know, and it's like maybe that does make sense, even from an unburdened place. Certainly, it makes sense from like where the lived reality of someone, right? Like if someone's like that seems hopeless, that seems like really scary, that seems like a waste of time. That's whatever. Like great, no like. But yeah, I think like there is a sense in which it's like there's a lot of like I wouldn't ask for relationship advice from the average person or something like that, because my story is that like often like people, like the default answer would be like to kind of just give up or something. And I'm like, I don't know, man.
When you talk about not asking for relationship advice from the average person, that's you mean romantic relationship advice, and you're using that as like an example of how people.
Actually, I say more platonic relationship advice.
Okay.
Like I feel like romance, there's a little bit more social norm around like working through it together and stuff. But like when it comes to family or friends, like I think I have a strong perception of like just cut them out. They're toxic.
Yeah. I mean, I guess this arcs back to the start of the conversation somewhat. It was like this person said they were not willing initially. They were like, "Nah, I'm not going to talk about that again." Like, whoa! Like, I don't know how to have a relationship with somebody who's not open to talking about the unresolved tension. That's no longer a connection. And so then there's just like what to do there? Yeah, do you feel like conflict avoidance is like a major issue that causes a lot of friendship breakdown?
I feel like there's like a distinction that I want to make between like it's like having conflict or tension and like disengaging / like disconnecting more fully from a relationship. Like we can disagree about where we want to eat dinner and still like have a loving relationship. And like we could never bridge like that you want pizza and I want like sushi, and like we can still have a friendship. And actually like this feels like an important part of like kind of the old friendships. Is like, oh, like can I love this person even like despite this disagreement? And can we be in connection despite that? Like we don't understand or see each other in these ways.
And it's not like resolution has to happen. It's just like sometimes we can just be like, we have this thing and it's okay. We still have this other thing which is keeping us together, and we can acknowledge that other thing and not resolve it, and that's cool. Then there's like this thing where whatever that disagreement is causes one or both parties to pull away. And like when is that the right move? And when is it not?
And I think like both of those like are deep, like highly personal and like contextual. And like what I'm wanting to speak out against, I guess, and like I'm afraid of is like the jump to just disconnect, rather than like actually considering the kind of like the nuance of the situation of whatever given situation. Or my story is that often like the jumpingness of it is fueled by fear of conflict.
It feels one more time.
My story is that the jumping, you know, like Joe Hudson has a great tweet that's like when decisions seem binary, fear is running the show. It's like if when people jump to disconnection, my story is that like fear of conflict is what's like making the decision, not some like more.
Yeah. Have you done Joe Hudson's course?
I haven't. I've been like moderately interested for a long time. Yeah. If it was in person, I'd do it.
Oh, it's all online. The art of accomplishment. You've spent more time there than me, I'm guessing. I'm curious. Yeah, what's your experience with it? What is it? How would you describe it to people who don't know it?
Yeah, Commons has been around for almost 2 years now. It's a third space, or it's a community space. There's where, yeah, basically in practice, what it looks like is during the day, usually there's people like co-working there, and then outside of that, there's people like hanging out or doing activities or events or workshops and stuff like that together. It's in San Francisco, and I was there for the last several months. For most of them,
you were going there pretty like multiple times a week for several months.
No, when I was in San Francisco, basically, I'd go probably every 2 or 3 days. Like that. Yeah,
and you spend like a good few hours there when you would go.
Depends. Like sometimes I might just pop in for like a few minutes just to see who's around. Sometimes I might be there all day. Kind of like vary. Usually somewhere in like the few hours a day range, but each time kind of great.
And what was your experience there? What kind of things were you getting up to?
Yeah. What was I doing? When I was there, often I was either doing my stuff on a computer. I was like having a conversation with someone, either planned or spontaneously. I was there for some event. There were some kind of like interest groupy things that were called guilds. There was an artist guild and mystics guild, so that was like weekly. This last time, a few months I was there, some of my interactions there were like with my crew. I had started 2 crews. I brought crew into the commons. That was this whole thing. In terms of like having like a little bit of structured interaction with a small group of people over time. And then random kind of like one-off events. Those would be like.
What did it look like? Oh, sorry. Again.
Yeah, that's kind of like what my time there looked like.
You said you brought crewing to the commons. What did that look like?
Yeah, so crewing, right, is this. I would describe it as a practice, which is like basically, like having small groups 3 to 6. It comes from something called Microsolidarity, which is a broader kind of framework around communities and groups and how they work and stuff. Crewing is basically when you have a small group of people that meets regularly for some N amount of time, and has some amount of like talking about how it is to be together, like reflection. Those are at this point like my kind of like 3 pillars of what makes up the crewing. And so I've done a bunch of this over the last few years. And when I was at the Commons, I was like, this would like definitely help here with some of the challenges that I'm seeing. And so, basically I was like helping people start crews.
Did you give a talk, or how did you get like spread awareness of what this was and what it was like, what it can do?
There was a whole process. Yeah, I'm wondering like how much to go into it. There's like my whole like the whole like fuck it, whatever. Just interrupt me if you want me to stop. Yeah, it was like gradual. It was like I'm like quite proud of it. Like basically when I was there, I ran like a little workshop on Microsolidarity. I started a little crew that we speed ran a crew season cycle in like 2 weeks. A few of the people who were involved in those things happened to be part of the volunteer leadership at the Commons, so I think they probably put in some good words about crewing. And eventually I was like asked to come back and help with it. So that's what I did. So that's what I was doing the last few months in San Francisco. And yeah, in practice,
crewing was the main focus of your time there, like building this crewing sort of system with the Commons and spreading the good word.
Yeah, the gospel. Yeah, that was one of maybe a few like focuses of my time there. Yeah.
What are people at the Commons typically doing? Is there like a couple of broad things, or is it very diverse?
Yeah. There's some like variety. I'd say the majority are like working in tech, have some sense of like, like relationships and communities are important. I think there's like a high level of like competence. It seems like people are like they're like quite established and like well regarded in their fields. Some like interior curiosity, some like wanting to figure out what the fuck is going on, like what they're doing with their lives. There's different people at varying steps in that like kind of process. There's some people, there's like some decent number of people who have taken like breaks from their work, like a sabbatical kind of thing. Yeah.
Is it unique in some ways?
Sorry?
Would you describe it as unique, and like what? If so, what makes it like different from anywhere else you've been?
I mean, I'd say it's very much a product of its environment.
Silicon Valley.
Yeah, emphasis on tech. Being a like burgeoning like sense of community in a place that's like I think had a like I suspect has sorely lacked a sense of community for a while, and a population like especially among that population.
So there's something called the neighborhood San Francisco as well. Is that right?
Yeah.
Is that sort of interconnected with the Commons somehow? Or what is the neighborhood, and are they manifestations both of this same sort of feeling of disconnection?
There's a way in which like I'm actually not like quite sure what the neighborhood is, but I know that the Commons is part of it. I know that like the people who like run the neighborhood, whatever that means, like are like in collaboration with people that run the Commons.
My sense was the neighborhood is like a collection of apartments that people have kind of bought and live in, and they're in a similar kind of neighborhood to one another, and they wanted to create some kind of like campus type environment of people who are aligned so they can have social connection and sort of a shared space where things can sort of sprout from which things sprout.
I think so. That's my understanding of the vision. Yeah. I'm not quite sure what it looks like, but
sounds like a cool idea. Just like if one has the resources to buy a bunch of apartments in a buzzing part of the world, wherever that might be. In this case, like the most expensive place in the entire world, pretty much. Then you can like really create a culture suddenly. If you can have like 20 apartments or whatever, and 100 people and other people around that, like boom, you just create a culture.
Yeah. I also like admiration for them and what they're doing. This is a way in which I think like there's a lot of fighting.
A lot of what? Sorry.
Uphill battle. Like it's expensive as shit. People there are like super grindy and focused on their work, so they actually don't like a lot of people don't have the time for community and relationships meaningfully. And I've been saying for a while, it's like if someone can only come to the Commons once a month, like there is nothing that I'm aware of that can help someone make friends in like on a once a month cadence, like meaningful friendships on a once a month cadence. Like I just don't. If that exists, I haven't come across it yet, and I've done a lot of looking.
What's the minimal viable connection time for actually making friendship?
Yeah. Was that rhetorical or asking?
Asking precise number. Give me hours per month. Yeah, I mean, obviously difficult to put a precise number on, but you sounded pretty concrete. You know, you cannot do that in a month, 1 hour, 1 day a month.
Yeah, I'd say it's something maybe like there's like levels of connection, like the Dunbar's number sort of thing. There's like acquaintances and casual friends, and then like friends and close friends, and then, actually like used this for a bunch of things that I was writing in the Commons because like a lot of stuff that we were learning as we were writing the current, which was like really cool. But my sense is maybe like each step requires maybe like exponentially more time. It's like seeing each other once a month sure is enough to be acquaintances.
Yeah.
But I think it's not enough to be, and maybe even casual friends if you have like a pretty decent connection.
Yeah.
But like to be someone that like I'm like, oh, this is my friend. I see them with some regularity. I look forward to seeing them. We make plans together. Like that's just not what once a month is.
Right.
Like that.
How was it? How easy or hard was it for you to find the connection you wanted there?
Yeah. So I think like I named the uphill battle stuff and like the admiration. You know, like another aspect of it is like it's like, and when people do have time, like and have like kind of there's the kind of like buffet choice sort of thing. Like there's so many things going on. And there's like, I'm sure like it's like part of the tech thing is like this optimization mindset. And so like there's like flakiness is something that we talked about in like our recent retro. And like, you know, like there's a whole thing around basically. It's really hard to get the same group of people to show up consistently. It's almost impossible or something in some ways. Which is like what's needed to act, you know, like to have, and so because of that, there's a way in which like, there's very minimal community in this city.
Wow.
Because like there's no sense of we if we've only met each other once. There's only a sense of
crewing.
And
crewing is like an attempt to solve this.
To start like a first step towards doing something about this. But yeah, so like there's a meaningful sense in which like there's no community in San Francisco because people aren't seeing each other with any regularity other than their coworkers in the house. That's all. It's something.
Yeah. And so for you, was that a bit of a struggle?
Somewhat. So I'd say like actually that there's any sense of community at the Commons at all is like a small miracle. And yeah, I guess I am like, I think I'm coming from a different frame or different like place and frame of reference or like, you know, yeah, like I'm used to work, like, I don't know. I'm used to like co-living. Where co-living in San Francisco is quite a different beast also. From you know, in like Europe or like with you guys in like Bali, where it's like, oh, like the point is like we're here to connect. That's one of the main reasons we're here, and we're seeing each other daily and connecting daily in a meaningful way. And like it's the same group of people, and there's some regularity, or even at the garden, right? Like the regularity, some like even some sense of time, even if it's like a week or two, you know.
And there's this big dichotomy between doing and being, isn't there? And like when you're in a place which is so focused on doing, San Francisco, or maybe like to a lesser but large degree London, New York, etc., people are focused on their careers and getting shit done. And then you've got places like Bali where many people are not working at all, and they're really focused on connection or the art of connection, like so meta connection in a sense, which is like a perfect ground for more connection. And then here I'm noticing. Quite a few people who are not working, but some people are, and yeah, work is an obstacle to connection, and that's what's led me into the line of work I'm trying to pursue. Like, how I just asked the question: how can I make a life where my work is connection? It's all right, coaching, facilitation, channel about connection. But it's like not everyone can do that, and it's like, finding that balance is hard, especially, and then you're in a place with like uber productivity. I imagine that creates a lot of challenges.
Yeah, there's a lot of challenges.
And that's why well, there was this big question, which was you going back to America, which suddenly comes to my mind. Like there was like a lot of resistance, but like a desire to dive into that, and it was like there's this story you had about what America means to you and to others, and worries about how that might cause you to fall into a different way of being. I wonder if you could speak to that story.
Yeah, I had a lot of fear of living in the US, and I no longer feel afraid. And so I feel really fucking good about that. Like, I'm really proud of that. There's a way in which that sounds stupid, but not like there's a lot in there. Yeah, there's like, it's like, oh, like, can I, like, I think they boil down to my relationship with myself and my relationship with others. One was like, right, and I'll start with others, is like, you know, like, can I feel satisfied with the with the level of connection that I have in this place where it's so uphill? And the answer was like, yeah. Like, it certainly wasn't my like ideal amount of level of connection in most cases, but like I felt plenty happy. I enjoyed my days. I had a lot of like, it was pleasurable. There was beauty. I enjoyed the connections that I did have. Certainly, I would want more, but like I wasn't feeling desperately alone. And if I did feel alone, like I could hold myself in that. Which like segues into relationship to self, which is like, that's part of it. Like my relationship to like myself and like holding myself in through loneliness and different things. And like, feels like there's like a ton of like internal growth there that I'm really proud of, and like my relationship with myself. And there's even like this like, yeah, like the part of the uphill battle is like the water that I swam in, right? Around like, oh, like you should be productive, you should be doing something, like creating value and impact. And if you don't, like how, like, you know. And there was a fear of just being like surrounded by that. Like I'm acutely aware of how influential like environment is, and there was a fear of like, yeah, would I get sucked into that? Would I get sucked back? Like, would I lose my sense of self? Would I like become ungrounded? Would I, you know, start packing my days? Which at some point I did, and like there's you know, like at various points I'd have to like roll it back and be like, oh, like actually I need to like protect my space here, because like there's a way in which this environment is hostile to that.
What were you packing your days with in those moments before you pulled back?
Like calls, and then meetings with someone, and then like event, and then another event, and then yeah. And
what was happening there? Was there was some osmosis from San Franciscan productivity that just like started to seep in and before you noticed, or something?
Sorry?
Was there like some sort of osmosis from this San Franciscan kind of doing that just like seeped into you? You're like, oh yeah. Or how did that ramp up happen before you caught it and were like, no, I don't want this?
Yeah. I mean, it works because it touches something in me, right? There's a part of me that wants to do and do and do. And so when I see everyone else do it, like I'm like, oh yeah, of course, I just keep adding. Yeah, and I think at some point, like, I remember at one point the first time I was there, I was like, oh, I'm like starting to feel tired. Like, oh, actually, I need to like clear out some space, like that kind of thing. Like just like not like mundane, but in a way, but also like kind of monumental.
Yeah. My sense was one of the maybe the big fear going back was something related to like work culture.
Totally.
Yeah, curious like what that fear was initially before returning, and how that shifted.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it was like, yeah, I was afraid that by being surrounded by people working, I would get sucked into the working frame. I think what I was really proud of was like, oh, like I can hold my own and like stay in myself and like not get sucked into that. And actually it was from that place that actually like I could start like, okay, like what is this thing again? Like let me like, what can I touch here? And it feels like I'm on like maybe at the beginning of like a slow journey to like having a more integrated sense of like work and how I relate to it.
So it opened up like, oh, work can be something I want to do, but it doesn't have to be something that just like unconsciously pulls me into a way of being that I don't want.
Yeah.
Nice. Congrats.
Yeah. Like I think it's like opened up like a path to like nuance in what I am interested in and interested in. I suspect that what I'm interested in would not make me employable. But you know, at least I'm open to some amount of the exploration.
Interesting. Is that a genuine belief you hold, that like the things you're interested in can't be something that would like create financial viability?
Sort of, yeah. To some extent. Yeah, like I'm reminded like a while ago, like I was someone wanted to interview me for a CTO position. I was like, all right, fine. And I had a few interviews where basically all of the interviews, I was like, just to be clear, like, I don't think you want to hire me. I don't care about the product at all. I am only interested in the intersection of this and crewing. I am only interested in doing anything insofar as it like contributes to a sense of connection with the people that I am working with / crewing with.
And they kept pulling you back more interviews.
Yeah, for a while. Yeah, for a bit. There were like 2 or 3.
Wow,
like,
interesting. How was
like, I realized like I didn't put these words to it until recently, but it's like, oh, like one of the things that I have the most aversion to work about is like the way that, at least the way that it lives in me, is like this, like it normalizes self-betrayal. It's like, oh, I'm tired. I wake up anyways. Oh, I don't want to do this. I do it anyways. Oh, I don't want to talk to this person. I talk to them anyways. Oh, just like this casual normalization of like constant self-betrayal. And I'm privileged to be in a position where I can where I'm trying to minimize that, and I just don't want to do that. And so I suspect working with me would involve a lot of no's. I'm like, nope, can't commit to that. Can't commit to that. Don't want to commit to that. Don't want to show up today. Like, and like, if someone's okay with that, great. Let's work together. I suspect most people would not be okay with that.
Well, there's like a world where in like 99.99% of jobs, random jobs, you're just going to be going, no. But there's a world in which you do the thing you want to be doing, and someone wants to hire you to do that thing, I guess.
Yeah, and I suppose like there's like in that, like if that exists, then I could see myself being open to it. And there's a way in which like I feel almost like a traumatized dog or something. It's like I don't feel actually comfortable just jumping straight into it. Like I like the way that I would want to start working also feels, I suspect, prohibitive. It's like I want to start with like 1 hour a week and like slowly working
What
up.
advice would you give to like people who aren't perhaps as free to just turn down every opportunity as you are, but also want to like have that? You said a great phrase and I've lost it. You said a really good phrase a moment ago about, do you remember what great phrase you said? It was like a 2-word phrase. I was like, that is great. I gotta remember that. Maybe it was self-betrayal. Yeah, if people don't want to betray themselves, but they have to work, what can they do? Differently. What can they do differently? And do you see most people betraying themselves?
I think that's my story, at least. I think there's a way to like relate to it that's like I am betraying myself in the now in service of a greater me or something. There's like some danger to that. Like I think there's like a lot of confounding variables there.
It feels different than just like I don't want to go to the gym, but I'm going to go to the gym to get, versus like I don't like my job, but I'm going to do it for a few years so that I can like buy a nicer house for my family. The latter feels much more risky for selling your soul off and like frittering your life away. And I see a lot of people taking jobs for money. So just like, okay, money's useful. There's a balance. I guess maybe it's a balancing act, ultimately.
I suspect at the meta level.
At the meta level.
I would say like at the meta level, it's like there's a lot of lack of clarity there. And what's necessary, like in my experience, what brings clarity is like space to reflect and space to experiment.
Yeah.
And
totally.
So like those are the things that
I would encourage people of a certain age to do more of that. I think when one is young, there's just spaciousness to take those risks because you can always just start again. And I've done a lot of that, and I'm glad I did because I would be doing some. I don't know. I don't think I would have ended up doing stuff that feels as nourishing and that enhances my life as much. And it took a lot of space and experimentation. A lot of experimentation to like gradually refine. Oh no, this thing nourishes me more. This thing nourishes me more. So not that. It just got closer and closer, and now I feel really nourished. And maybe some people find that earlier, but a lot of people I think are not nourished by their work, and yeah, a lot of fear and
Yeah.
Let's try and wrap this up, shall we?
Sounds good. Yeah, I gotta pee. So. Well,
what would be a good closing question or statement or what that somehow like pulls back to what we've been talking about? What's next for Johnson in the realm of social vocational exploration? Either of any of those things. What's the next growth arc in all this stuff for you?
Well, the next few weeks I'm focused on family and friends. I guess would be Lisbon, where I'll be for a little over a month with the crew. Where the intention is to be like living together, to be circling together a lot, to be bringing together community. And that feels really exciting. I haven't had many opportunities to build, try it and be bringing people together and hosting and gathering and not alone, with a crew.
Yeah.
To do that with the cruise feels really exciting to me.
Yeah, brilliant. Wonderful. Yeah, and that's something people can do. You can find people to live with who also want to bring cool stuff and bring people together. And this is such a great way to enhance connection in life.
Totally.
Awesome. Thanks, Johnson.
Yeah. And how about you?
What's the question? What is the next growth arc? I feel like this year I've been trying to notice where the fear is and just lean into the fear and take it on a bit, just cultivating joy to help the strangers. Getting in the ice bath feels like it was the start of a trajectory. What am I afraid of? I don't know if that question is maybe still alive in me. I think yesterday's circling experience alerted me to something that I want to work through. I think talking about politics on this channel is going to be an interesting one. That question might be one I need to dig into more. There's quite a lot of uncertainty now. I think I'm going to leave this community in a couple of weeks, and I don't know where I'm going to go with that. So that's an open question. Part of me I want to go to Israel, or I want to go to Iran, or I want to go to Ukraine, or I want to go to America as the election gets closer and talk to people about polarization and their experience.
Yo, that could be cool. Especially if the Seattle thing happens.
Seattle polarization 2024. That's it. Well, that could give me an extra boost towards Seattle. But Seattle's just hardcore. There's going to be polarization. It's America. Polarization is guaranteed.
There's less polarization.
Yeah. I mean, being in America on election day, I think I have to do that. Maybe I have to do that. I wanted to do that last time. It feels like such a powerful. The moment the election is announced, there's no country that has more. It's just a wow. Being there on the moment the election is announced, in amongst Americans, to experience a wave of joy or fear, and to talk to people about the experience of that. I think that could be really cool.
Yeah.
Maybe we could collab on that.
That could be cool. Yeah. Hold a brief ritual for whoever loses.
Oh, a brief grieving ritual for the losing party.
For
forgiveness ritual.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sweet, dude. Yeah. Well, we'll chat more.
Thank you for giving me a lot of your time this morning.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good to see you, brother.
Same to you. I really enjoyed this. Good to see you too, man.
Have a beautiful day. Good luck with the forgiveness ritual with your mum.
Ooh-wee. Thanks,
excited to
dude.
hear how it goes.
Yeah. Yeah, I might be in need of emergency emotional support. We'll see.
Yeah, feel free to reach out, man.
Oh, all right. Take care, dude. Have a good one.
Peace. See you soon.
Bye.